Welcome. I'm Paul Serrato. I'm a jazz musician and composer. Over the years, I've amassed quite a sizable collection of jazz posters, and today I'm going to share them with you, and some of them are of very special interest. They're probably one of a kind. Let's get started, and I will begin with downtown New York jazz posters. This poster is from Slug's Saloon, which was a jazz club in the 1960s in New York. It lasted maybe a couple of years, and it was in the East Village. Check out this lineup: Joe Henderson, Jackie McLean, Wayne Shorter, Yusef Lateef, Sun Ra. Where can you get a lineup like that today? This was a psychedelic poster, and it may be one of the few left in existence. I'm not sure. Got a little frayed around the edges. I was mistreating it, and finally I realized that it was such a treasure that I decided to preserve it and put it in a frame. Let's move across town to West Village to Art de Lugoff's Village Gate, the legendary jazz club on Bleecker and Thompson, which had a long run of many decades. Talking about lineups, check out this lineup. This was a typical kind of month at the Village Gate. All superstars, and this was the calendar in 1965. Myself, my friends, we always used to hang at the Village Gate because the acts there were legendary, and you could get in cheap and stand at the bar for a drink and see the whole show. More Village Gate. This was an extraordinary evening, and I'm so happy that I have this poster. Tribute to Bobby Timmons. Bobby Timmons, for anyone out there who doesn't know, was a great jazz pianist and composer. He composed one of the great jazz classics, Moanin'. Every evening find me moanin', moanin', ba-ba-da-da-ba-da-ba-ba. It's been covered a million times. Beautiful piece. This was at the top of the gate. Unfortunately, this tribute to Bobby was on the event of his demise. He passed on at a young age, and all of these artists gathered together to pay tribute. Check out the lineup again: Patty Bone, Mickey Bass, Roy Brooks, Randy Weston, Yusef Lateef, Art Blakey, Roland Alexander, Pharoah Sanders, Leon Thomas, Billy Taylor. Actually, today, many of these great players are no longer with us, so this poster has really great sentimental value. It's a real treasure of that moment at the Village Gate when we paid tribute to Bobby Timmons. I became involved with the Village Gate both as a performer and working in the gate as everything from a bouncer to a bartender to a doorman, you name it. Village Gate was a kind of a mom and pop operation, and you had to do like just about everything. It was a lot of fun. This poster was when I was working at the gate. Dollar Brand, who at that time had not officially become Abdullah Ibrahim, at least not in New York. He had a great, great ensemble, and I particularly like this poster. I took it from the Village Gate, as I did the Bobby Timmons poster. These things would have been trashed if I hadn't salvaged them. And being a poster collector, I couldn't see that happening, so I absconded with them. Well, here is a poster and a half. We're still in the West Village. We moved a few blocks over from the Village Gate to the Mercer Arts Center, which was a short-lived jazz room and bar in the 70s. Here we have Mingus headlining. And I particularly like this poster, whoever did it. I love first of all, the angle of the shot of Mingus, the way it was taken looking up at him, and the way that the graphic designer framed the photo in the black frame. I think it's a beautiful piece of work, and the black and white just really works perfectly. Mingus also did a lot of engagements at the Village Gate as well. And I actually at one point had the job of taking his bass when he was finished playing it, and I was in charge of putting it away and bringing it back on when he would return the next night. He was very picky about his bass. Still in the Village, this time a little farther over on 6th Avenue, Zygot. This was a magazine, an indie music magazine. Great drawing here of Miles. I love the colors. There, you can tell it's like the 70s. It's kind of psychedelic font here. And this magazine didn't stick around too long. I was working in a bookstore in Greenwich Village at the time, and we had the magazine, so they brought in the poster, and it was probably going to be trashed. So once again, I salvaged it, and I said, oh, this is too great to be trashed. So it survives, and I'm really glad that I still have it. It's a beauty. Well, here we're going to move a little farther uptown and a little farther ahead in chronology. Here we have an avant-garde treatment of Oneida O'Day, and this is at Reno Sweeney, which was on West 13th Street, and it was became a legendary cabaret club during that period of the late 70s, and Anita was appearing there with Lenny Hambro, a great trio, and I must have taken this poster off of a wall because they used to plaster these things on empty walls or vacant walls around the area, and it looks like I probably tore it off a wall, and I'm glad I did. Moving even farther uptown, we made it to Town Hall, an evening with Jerry Mulligan and his music. Yeah, wow, and look at the prices here. You could get in for $1.35 at that time. This was probably in the 1960s, I would think. Once again, I probably removed this from some kind of a public surface somewhere. But anyway, it's great. I love all this red and white. May 15th, I'm not sure of the year, but it would have been in the 1960s. Don Friedman was a very famous promoter and producer, and he did a lot of producing at the Village Gate, Latin nights, and a lot of other jazz also. Now we really are uptown. Wow, we made it to Lincoln Center. Philharmonic Hall, that was called, as it was called in those days. It's now, I believe, David Geffen Hall. This hall has had more incarnations, renovations, and name changes that I can't even keep track of them all. But this was the legendary Thelonious Monk and Orchestra concert at Lincoln Center. You see here, 1963, it was arranged by Hall Overton, who I had as a teacher in composition at the New School, and the concert survives. There's a live recording of it on Columbia Records, produced by Jules Colombi. This poster is like really, it's a beauty. I love it, and I'm really glad that I kept it in my collection. Let's shoot downtown again to the Times Square area, Birdland, but we're talking about the real Birdland, okay? The Birdland that was named after Bird, Charlie Parker, and the club into which he was not allowed to enter nor play. That's the irony of it. He, at that time, and up until the 70s, I'm not sure of the date, but everyone working in a nightclub had to have what was called a cabaret card. This is an interesting part of New York entertainment history. And if you worked in a cabaret or music club, whether it was as a performer on stage or whether it was as a waiter, bartender, maintenance, you had to have a cabaret card. What was that? It was a little card, little ID card, and the police issued it to you, and it had a mugshot of you and your fingerprints. And to get that, you had to have a clean record. And if you didn't have a clean record, you couldn't get a cabaret card. If you couldn't get a cabaret card, you couldn't work in a club. So not exactly the happiest piece of New York entertainment history. But check out the Summer Festival of Jazz. Woody Herman, Johnny Richards, Chris Connor, Count Basie, Maynard Ferguson, Stan Kenton. These were the big bands. Dinah Washington, Dave Brubeck. I mean, talk about all-stars, right? I mean, this is one summer. And it shows you the kind of music that was really popular at that time. Birdland always liked to have bands, and they always featured these bands. This was actually a flyer, and I don't know if another one of these even exists, but I got this one. Whoa, okay, hereby hangs a tale. The Great Salsa 93 Festival Concert at Madison Square Garden. I mean, this lineup is legendary also. I can't even, if I take the time to read all these great names, it'll take another 5 minutes. But anyway, you can check it out. The interesting story on this poster, and you can see here there's a little damage. I was teaching at LaGuardia Community College, and in order to get to the subway from LaGuardia, you had to cross a bridge. And before this concert was announced, they took these posters and affixed them to the lampposts on the bridge. Well, I was walking across the bridge that afternoon, evening, whatever it was, and I saw the poster. They had them stapled back to back on the bridge. Well, I could not, being a poster collector, I couldn't resist this beautiful poster, the lineup, the colors, the whole thing. I mean, and since I play a lot of Latin jazz myself, though not salsa, it had a special resonance with me. So I tore it off the lamppost and rolled it up and ran down the bridge so I wouldn't be arrested, and brought it home, and it survives here in my studio, and I love it. It's a great poster. The artwork for this record, which is a Columbia record, was done by someone, brilliant watercolor artist, who is not credited on this LP, and they used his work on several releases, not only Duke, but there's a release with Louis that he designed, and I wish I knew who he was, but I tried to find it on the internet, and even on the internet on the Columbia side, I couldn't find credit for whoever he was. I say he because all of these guys who did all of these artists who did work for the record companies were all men. As you can see, he did variations of it, and he did sign the original watercolor, which you're looking at now, and I can't make out his name on that watercolor. If anybody knows, please tell me. The watercolor, the original, which is framed here, was acquired by me a few years ago in a Chelsea flea market in New York. I couldn't believe it when I saw it laying on the ground on a summer day, and I immediately seized upon it. I asked the guy, you know, how much did he want for it? He said $25, and I just immediately shelled out the money, and that was it. It's a real treasure. It came framed like this and everything, so I don't know what its history is, who had it, why they gave it up, but this artist is really a wonderful jazz artist. This spectacular poster was originally designed for the New York City subway to announce the Elvin Ailey Dance Company paying tribute to Duke Ellington. It was all over the New York City subway system. I had seen it and admired it, and it just so happened I had a friend who worked for the publishing house, and he told me, you like that poster so much, I can probably get you a copy because Bia Feitler is a friend of mine. Bia Feitler is the designer who created this Art Deco spectacular poster. And it's one of my favorite posters, one of the favorite posters in my collection. It's really a classic. I think it's been reproduced in books and magazines. Well, here's a poster. Here's one of my group. This was in Soho at Kavehaz. And the poster was done by Itsuro Miki, who was a student of mine, a young man about 20 years old who was studying graphic design at the School of Visual Arts. And the young man was so talented and so gifted. He had his ideas, and I love the way he put this poster together. Kavehaz, after 9/11, went out of business because the area around Prince Street in Soho was all cordoned off. It was right adjacent to the World Trade Center, so all of those businesses had to close up, and it was cordoned off to anybody except the police and the fire department. So this was for many weeks. So what happened was, when they finally lifted the ban and businesses could open again, Kavehaz did reopen again, but it couldn't regain the momentum. And it was a great restaurant jazz club. It got a really hip crowd, and they had a real piano, grand piano. It was great playing there. And here I am with my lineup at that time: Bryce Sebastian, who's on many of my CDs, Gary Brewer, great drummer, Henry Morales, also on many of my CDs. Miss those guys. So another poster that Itsuro Miki designed for me. This one, which was also at Kavehaz. Very ingenious way, the way he did this. Everybody asks me, gee, was your name really on the side of this building like this? Like Broadway style, right? No, he actually, I'm giving away the tricks of the trade. He did that. This lineup was with Bryce again, Henry again, and with Chip Shelton, who was a wonderful flute player in New York. And we did many gigs together, and he also is on some of my CDs. I also had an additional Latin percussionist, Henry Adorno. Great gig, great place. It's just too bad that it had to go under the way that it did, and the way that so many of those places did have to go under. I would like to close by sharing some up-to-date news with you. I have a new CD, which is released this month of June, and it's called Urban Fingerprints. It's myself on piano with Hill Green on bass. So we're doing duos of original compositions by myself and by Hill, as well as a couple of beautiful covers of Billy Strayhorn tunes. So this will be available on CD Baby. It'll also be MP3s and iTunes. Urban Fingerprints, Paul Serrato and Hill Green.